here with two other pals, and two of us have colds. So just watch out for that, and you can listen to our sexy, sexy phlegm. I'm here tonight with a voice you may recognize, my friend Beth.
Hi, I do not have a cold yet.
Beth is the only healthy one in the room, but she's sitting really close to us, so perhaps that will change.
In the line of fire over here.
Yeah.
So.
Beth was with us for Where the Crawdads Sing, which actually I think is our most popular. It was our original episode and remains our most popular.
It was a hot episode.
You're famous.
Thank you.
That was our nature porn episode.
Yes.
If you haven't listened, please go back and check it out. And also joining us tonight is the famous my brother, Tucker.
Hello.
Tucker May, y'all. Here he is.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
In the flesh.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, we're excited. So tonight, we have gathered here. We are drinking hot cider. We are being as spooky as possible. There's candles lit so that we can discuss. There's a ghost! Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
That was a ghost.
That was a pretty
I do a good ghost.
beginner ghost.
Pretty beginner ghost? Oh, no.
Oh, no. This is a beginner ghost. We're talking about The Shining. By our pal Stephen King, which I am a newly formed Stephen King fan.
What?
Yeah, I like him. He's cool. This guy doesn't give a fuck. He knows what's up. I just think he seems like everything he does it because he's like, this will be fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm into him, and this book will be really, really fun to talk about. So let us do a quick plot rundown.
Yes.
For those who are listening who maybe have read it or have seen the movie but don't quite remember what happened.
Yeah.
What happened in The Shining?
The Shining. We're not going to worry about spoilers because I think this book is... It's so old. Frankly, if you don't know how it ends, that's on you. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Was it published in like 1978?
Past the statute of limitations for this spoiler alert.
I think 1970. Let me look at it. 1977.
Woohoo!
Yeah. 77. So this book is older than us.
Yeah.
Everyone in this room. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to worry about spoilers. If that enrages you, turn this shit off. All right. So plot rundown. Who wants to kick us off? What happens?
Oh, we're all part of the plot rundown.
Yeah, everyone's part of the plot rundown. Everyone's part of the podcast.
All right. Okay, so we have this family, right? And Jack Torrance has recently lost his job as a teacher.
Yeah.
Due to an issue with anger.
An issue with anger and perhaps alcohol. And he gets offered a gig that he can't refuse way up in the mountains of Colorado.
Yes.
At the Overlook Hotel.
Bum, bum, bum. Lightning strike. Troll sound.
The gig is basically in the off season, which if any of you are skiers know is the period from about May to October, I think.
Yeah.
Where the Overlook Hotel, which is a ski resort, shuts down.
Yep.
And they need somebody to maintain the boiler.
Yeah. They want to keep the hotel heated. It's a very large hotel. They want to keep it from freezing, the pipes from freezing, because it causes a lot of damage and it costs a lot of money. So they employ an off-season caretaker. And that is our guy, Jack Torrance.
And during the winter time, it gets so snowy, all the roads are closed.
Yeah.
These people are completely shut in. Whoever's
They're
caretaking this Overlook Hotel is there. There's no outs.
Yeah. It's pre-cell phones, which I always like to call out any kind of plots that wouldn't work today.
Yeah. But you know, there might not even be like service up in this.
Yeah. No,
it's
true.
definitely a remote.
Yeah.
You know, you might be able to get direct TV.
Like the telephone lines, like they go down in the winter,
Yeah.
and like they have a CB radio, and that's like the only way they can.
Yeah.
So so they go to the Overlook, and then the little boy Danny, he's kind of special. He has this like kind of special ability where he can kind of see the future. He can kind of read people's minds. He has like this touch about him.
Yeah, he's 5.
And they call it
The Shining.
The Shining.
That's right.
That's your beginner ghost over
There
there.
you go.
It's just people who shine. Right.
So we should clarify. So it's Wendy, Jack. They're married. They're young. They're probably
young.
like 30,
Maybe.
Like, yeah.
It's the 70s.
And
Yeah,
They're
is it ever
like
made
25.
clear? They're probably mid-30s, I think.
No way.
I think they're like late 20s.
I thought they were
honestly.
really young,
I
yeah.
think they're pretty
Really?
young.
Because it's
Okay.
like Fred, they get married like her senior year of college, and then they have Danny like the next year.
Yeah, and he's 5, so
So it's the three of them heading up.
yeah.
Parents
Yeah.
and Danny.
And then Danny, he can kind of see the future. He like has these sort of like episodes or spells, and we learn that those are kind of called the Shining, or that his gift is called the Shining. And then things kind of start going awry. The hotel is very old. A lot of people have died there. It's kind of haunted, so things are like go downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah, Jack starts to find out more history about the hotel, and it sort of blurs the line between things that he's reading about and things that are happening and paranormal activity that might be going on. And
yeah, I think that's pretty much all.
yeah, I mean, spoilers, we know the end.
And it
but-
gets darker from there.
Yes.
Yeah. And there are additional characters. Maybe Dick Halloran
Oh, yeah.
is an important one to mention.
Yeah, very
Oh, yeah.
important.
Who teaches Danny what the Shining is, and he
Yeah,
also has the Shining
He's
himself.
the chef for the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah, but he leaves. Like, all the staff leaves. I, like, love that idea of, like, on the last day, everyone just leaves.
Yeah, it's like camp. It's like the end
Yes,
of camp.
it's
Everyone's
like the last day of
"Bye."
camp. And they
Thanks for
truly,
the
like,
memory.
just show up. Like, wouldn't you think they'd have, like, it would be like, come stay for a week or something. But no, they show up, like, 2 hours before the hotel is completely emptied out.
Completely
Yeah.
shut down.
And
Yeah.
everyone's just like, okay, bye, good
Actually,
luck.
I love that, yeah.
See you in 5 months. Like,
Yeah.
what? That's crazy.
Yeah, the whole setup does seem a little irresponsible just on on behalf of the Overlook management team.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I do think it's kind of like that. Oh, I don't know. Because I have a summer camp that's only open in the summers. And there's off-season caretakers. They don't stay the whole winter, but they come and they stay for like a couple weeks at a time. And it is sort of just like, bye. Like, okay, there's the kitchen. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I mean...
Well,
This is-
the nice thing is, like, Stephen King really makes it out like this is like a desperate situation for Jack, and like this gig, as horrifying as it sounds, is kind of like he's an author. We should talk about that.
Oh, yeah, he's a writer.
And so he thinks that this is his time to write his book. And
Yeah. All right, guys. So,
Okay.
first question, did either of you listen to this on audiobook?
no,
No, I read it
Okay, same.
I read it with my eyes
Cool.
in my brain.
And then, who has seen the movie The Shining?
1,000,000 times.
1,000,000 times.
I've seen it once years ago.
Once years ago, and I have never seen it.
The movie, really?
I've never seen it.
All right.
So, okay, cool. So we've got some different perspectives here. So I feel like I will be speaking truly only about the book tonight on account of never seen the movie. I obviously am like familiar with what happens in it because it's just so famous.
Mm-hmm.
I can picture this like famous scenes and stuff, but
It's incredibly different.
Yeah.
That was my number one takeaway.
It is.
It's shocking to me how different it is.
so did you like the book? Yes or no? Answer.
Yes.
Yes, definitely liked it.
Yes,
Liked
I
it a whole
also
lot.
liked it. Oh, good. Yes, I liked it too.
It's a really good,
Ooh,
really fun time.
We all liked
Yeah.
it. I wonder if that'll be the same at book club. I bet not.
I bet not too. I was hoping you guys would both like it, but I am actually like, I'm curious. I think some people might be like, what the hell was this?
What was this? It is extremely long. It's very, very long.
Didn't feel long.
I didn't
to
feel
me,
that way
but
either.
I thought it felt a little long.
I think one of Stephen King's. So I've read a bit of Stephen King. I really love him. He's actually my favorite author. I don't know if I told you that, but he is. But I think one of his
that's amazing.
I think one of his like key qualities is that he is really good at shifting perspective, going from one character to another character to different stories. He has anecdotes that could be short stories themselves, like Jack remembering his dad coming home from work or something. That could just be a short story. Like, it could be an essay. And I just like love that. To me, the variations in the book keep it from feeling long
Oh, yeah.
instead of one sort of like narrative from one perspective.
Yeah.
I have
I
not
hear
read
that.
a whole lot of Stephen King, but I would, based on this book, I would agree wholeheartedly with that. There's, a dozen little lives that each of these characters live within the overall story.
I would read a whole book about Dick Halloran, in Florida.
Yeah, and you could. He could write it.
Yeah.
I think he's like a savant. Like, he churns out books, like every year.
Yeah, he's written like 72 books.
Yeah.
He just released one this month. A new one came out. Ugh, the name of it is currently escaping me. But it came out, and the week it came out, he announced another book is coming out in May 2020. Are you kidding me?
Well,
how is that even possible?
Quick plug, my very favorite book of all time is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. It's the best book I've ever read. I cried for an hour after I finished it by myself in my bedroom. But anyways.
No, I really want to read it. A couple people have told me that. I know you have, but
it's
I've heard it
incredible.
from other people too.
I think it won like the Pulitzer Prize or something. Fact check me, somebody.
Maybe. Yeah, someone fact check.
And Hulu made a whole mini-series.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Hulu
cool.
made a mini-series off it.
Yeah. I would definitely, I am definitely interested in reading more. The only other Stephen King I've read is the first in the Dark Tower series.
Okay.
Oh, I have read the Dark Tower series. I forgot.
How many
read
of
those
them?
in high school.
Wow.
I read all of them in high school.
Oh, wow.
I forgot. Those don't even file away as Stephen King.
I do feel like they're very different, yeah.
Because, they are very different. I mean, as far as I know, from the rest of his canon.
Yeah.
What are the major themes of this book?
Guilt.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guilt.
How guilt can weigh on you and change your, how your past actions can weigh on you and change your present behavior. Definitely.
Isolation.
Yeah.
Being inside one's own mind. What the mind can do. Actually, I mean, even The Shining sort of feels to me like the extent of the brain's abilities to... Like, I love that Stephen King says that a lot of people shine a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's whether or not, you can access it.
I feel like, do you guys feel like you shine? I definitely do.
I find that I have deja vu that is overwhelming sometimes. And that, to me, is my own version of the shine.
Interesting.
Like, I've been somewhere before.
No, I'm sane. No, but the line is all mothers shine.
Yeah.
At least a little bit.
I feel like women in our culture are probably more likely to, because it's just like you're more empathetic, or like you're like raised to be more intuitive than men are, or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of men lose that as they grow up.
I would agree with that.
Like, all children have it, and then I kind of feel like it's a similar thing with animals. Like, little kids often have like really strong connections with animals. And then you kind of can lose it as you grow up.
Well, he ties in the whole imaginary friend type
yeah.
of thing. That is exactly that.
Yeah.
His connection with Tony, he takes his mental ability and funnels it into an imaginary character.
Yeah.
So he can deal with it better. It's a very childlike thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That we tend to lose growing up.
Well, and I kind of wonder, like, would his dad have, like, tough manned it out of him eventually, Like, would Jack Torrance have, hey, buck up, kid, like...
Well, one thing
enough
that
to
I like love about the book, and we can talk about this later, but is the parents trying to be good parents. They're not just cut and dry. Like, Jack isn't just a terrible dad. He is loving to Danny in several instances, and I do think that they acknowledge Danny's shine. They don't just say, you're crazy, that's not possible.
Yeah.
I think a lot of writing about evil characters, they're just so evil all the time.
Yeah.
And these people are like trying to be good parents.
Well, yeah, a lot of nuance to the characters.
Yeah,
No doubt.
I definitely agree. Well, one of my questions is, and I can just ask it now, is are they good parents? Yes or no? Are Jack and Wendy good parents?
That's a tough question.
That is a tough
I'm going to say
question.
yes. I think I'm going to say yes. They're trying... The whole book is about people being haunted by their inner demons and how it affects their outer lives.
And their circumstances. Like, I think they're trying to be good parents. And isn't that all any kid wants, or like all anybody can do is try? Like, they're bogged down by pretty severe history and circumstances.
And economic circumstances,
Yeah.
especially. A large part of why they do this is because they know they don't have any other economic choices, and they want to be good providing parents to their child. A big part of it is they're backed into this corner because they want to be good parents.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to like people who make that really hard choice to like leave their own children to go work at a job far away because they decide like providing economic security is more important than like my physically being there. You could apply the same question probably, like, are they good parents? They're absentee, but they're doing it for that reason. Yeah.
And like Wendy, you know, asked Danny, like, Danny, can we do this? Can we stay here? And the alternative is going to her mom's, which I love that whole part because that is like, that's not in the movie at all, talking about her relationship with her mother and what a like demon. It's like their family is in their own escape room. Like there's no way out, really.
Yeah, although I don't know. I didn't really get the mom thing. I don't know. I didn't buy it.
I think like having you know, Jack has his issues with his dad, and Wendy's issues with her mother are way more complicated and emotional because they're women, and I think that is super interesting. Like she would, if Danny and her came to stay with Wendy's mom, like she would just, why is he wearing that? Why are you doing this? Why is his hair cut that way? Like that is like horrifying in itself. Yeah. Like to me, I can
nitpicking, like making you feel bad all the time, like
making you feel as small as possible. It's like its own form of abuse, and I think Stephen King like actually puts weight to that and gives it its own storyline, whereas Jack's father obviously throwing him over his shoulder and stuff.
Yeah, well, it's presented as the alternative to staying in this horrifying haunted place. Yeah. And they choose to stay in this horrifying haunted place.
Yeah.
So yeah, he clearly does a very good job of bringing that, you know, troublesome relationship to life between the mother and the daughter. They actively choose to remain at
Danny's
the
like, no, I'd rather be in this hotel.
Yeah, he specifically says that.
Yeah.
I know, but that is like, that part for me is such a like horror movie part where you're just screaming like, get out. Like, why are you staying there? Why would you ever choose to stay? Like, I was screaming at the book, like, go. Like, you're in town. Like, don't go back.
And that's like another theme though, is love. Like how far you'll go. Like Danny just loves his parents so much and he wants to be with his dad. Even at the end when things are going berserk, he's like, you hit daddy. Like, oh, it just like pulls at your heart because you're like, kid, like wake up. Like you're gonna die.
Yeah, you stupid little kid.
And then she has to convince him that's not your dad. I thought that was so... Well, anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. Some other ones that I wrote down were duty. Like, I think, like, obviously fear. I like the idea of, like, Beth, you were talking about this, of, like, in your mind, like, what's, like, real versus imaginary. And that line gets super blurred when they're at the hotel. I mean, it kind of always is with Danny, but I think he's able to tell the difference even better than his parents are, or at least better than Jack. Like, Jack truly, by the end, like, everything imaginary is real, and vice versa. Like, he has lost complete grip on all of it.
Well, I think for Jack, the themes of fear and duty are kind of one and the same. They're two sides of the same coin. He's terrified of leaving this place because he knows he doesn't have a way to support his family, and that's what a man is supposed to do in his society. But he's also terrified of staying in this place. There's no way he's not after the things that... I mean, he starts seeing his stuff pretty early on in the story.
The hedges.
And he denies it all because he's so much more scared of not being able to provide economically for his family.
Yeah. Ooh, the hedges.
The hedges. Okay, so let's get into the book. Page 1.
Page 1. Oh, yes, first sentence.
We're going to do opening line?
Yeah.
Yes, let's do.
Jack Torrance thought, officious little prick.
I love this.
You love it?
I love this opening line.
Tell me why.
It seems like it's absolutely nothing. You could read it. You read right past it when you're starting the book. 6 words, and in 6 words he manages to give us almost an entire outline of what this is going to be. We start with Jack Torrance. We know immediately that's either one of our main characters or the main characters. or the main character. The next word is thought. We're immediately inside of his mind.
Yeah.
So immediately we're being told Jack Torrance is our guy. It's about what's happening in his mind.
Yeah.
And what's happening in his mind right now is the words officious little prick. So 6 words.
Yeah.
We're getting our main character, the fact that it's about what's going on in his mind, and the fact that, it might spell trouble. And also he uses the word officious, which tells us this is not a dumb character. This is someone...
Right, yeah, he's a writer, yeah.
Right. This is someone with a very well-developed vocabulary who still feels these dark... It's 6 words, and it gives us our main character, that it's going to be about his mind, and that it's going to be dark.
Yeah.
In 6 words. That's an unbelievable...
I would argue that it also gives us... I didn't like Jack Torrance from this first sentence.
Yeah.
I don't like him. He sounds like an asshole.
Yeah.
Even though he's only thinking this, he sounds like an asshole. He's using the word prick.
Mm-hmm.
He uses the word little. He's belittling someone. And this, even the officious in there, like, he's
holier than thou.
Yeah, oh yeah. He's up on a high horse.
And that is the beauty of Stephen King, and this is what I was texting you about earlier, is that he always writes, even in the third person, in the character. So even though that's a thought, he would still write that way. He wants you to think that he's a prick because he's writing as a prick. He always switches the way that he writes to the character.
Yeah.
And then that proves it with Danny, where he capitalizes the thoughts that Danny has that he doesn't understand, or the words that he doesn't understand. But he's not, in those moments, he's not saying Danny thought this. He's just writing that way. Yeah. And I just think that is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, the Danny sections too, like, excuse me, they don't even have, like, punctuation is wrong.
Right.
And sometimes missing altogether. And we get tons of run-on sentences, and it's, like, stream of consciousness.
Yeah. And misspelled words sometimes.
Yeah, he spells them the way he's, like, would pronounce them. Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, you can tell who you're reading. It's interesting. I just finished another book called Spinning Silver. It's up there. And it was a similar thing where we were inside the consciousness of like 6 different characters. Mm-hmm. And a couple times I had trouble knowing whose head we were in, and it would take me a paragraph to figure it out. And then I read a Goodreads review that was like, it was confusing and you had to learn the symbols for each character. And then I looked back and realized that at the top of each section there was a different symbol to indicate which character was... I totally missed it. It didn't even occur to me. Anyways, I guess my point is this is much better.
You don't need a symbol.
You don't need a symbol. You don't need to tell me who we're in. I know who it's going to be based on exactly how it's written and the language choices and all that stuff. Like, it is extremely specific. Yeah, that's cool. All right, first sentence.
Great first sentence.
So on page 19, Wendy is sitting with Danny, and Danny asks, why did Daddy lose his job? And she says, your daddy, sometimes he does things he's sorry for later. Sometimes he doesn't think the way he should. That doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. And I highlighted this, I think, because I was just like, oh shit, Daddy got a temper. Like, this guy's gonna be a problem. This guy might be a wife beater. Like, what's happening with him? And I just think introducing it this way, which is like we're telling it to a child, is such an interesting way, I think, to introduce it to the reader. Like, I think it makes you more empathetic, or maybe it makes you less. I don't know. I can't decide. Because I want it to be like, oh, she's got to leave him. Like, from this story, I'm like, she needs to go. But I also, like, she's explaining it to a child and kind of dumbing it down for a child. I don't know. I really caught on it of, like...
Well, to me, what strikes me is that she's taking this... she's describing this thing where Jack has horribly physically assaulted someone. And she is trying to dumb it down for a child. And she ends up using language that could describe, I mean, the mistakes anyone has ever made in their life. Sometimes they do things they're sorry for. Sometimes they don't think the way they should. That's a very universal thing. Yeah, and it's because she's trying to dumb it down for a child. And it's taking this horrific act of, he beat the shit out of someone.
Out of a kid.
A college kid in a parking lot.
No, it was a high school kid.
Yeah.
It was a preparatory, college prep school. The kid was probably 16 or 17 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
You're right.
and we don't find out what happened for a really long time. Like, we don't get Jack's, like, the real story for a really long time. I didn't mark where, but it's like halfway through, or maybe farther. So all we really get of it is, like, this, and then little kind of flashbacks. You lost your temper, you lost your temper, you lost your temper.
We get the guy's name at some point pretty early.
Yeah. But, like, we get this introduction and this sort of, like, little taste of it, and then we don't get the full story for a really long time.
That's a lot of what this book is, though. A little hint at malevolence,
Yeah.
and then you have to sit in it and wait until that comes to fruition.
Yes.
I know.
It's a lot of the
there were a lot of
Builds the
times.
suspense.
There were a lot of times at the end of a chapter or like section that I'd be like, "Oh no, I want to keep going with this storyline, but I know we're gonna alt to someone else."
Okay, page 38. So we talked about how we like that Danny, that the language and like the style is so different depending on the character that we're talking to or that we're hearing from. So on page 38, I called this out because this is when we get Danny starts talking about the bad thing, and bad thing is capitalized, and it says like, Daddy had gone off to do the bad thing. Danny knew perfectly well what the bad thing was, since Scotty Aronson, who was 6 months older, had explained it to him. What is the bad thing?
It's drinking.
Drinking.
It's just drinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty contextualized later.
Well, it is later, but the first time I read this, I read it a few times because I was like, is he talking about hitting? Or is he talking about drinking? Or is he talking about thinking about divorce? Like, I thought it could have been a few things. But yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, it does become clear that it's drinking.
Mm-hmm.
But in that context, I wasn't sure.
I love it because you really feel that like childhood innocence that he has.
Yeah.
And he's trying to understand. And he capitalizes it to make it's a buzzword to Danny. Like, he knows it's important. Divorce. Like, words like that. But he doesn't fully understand them.
Yeah, with Danny, the shining kind of manifests itself as just a little bit of a peek into the adult world. You know, where he understands his mom's been thinking about divorce, which is a concept he doesn't really fully get.
Yeah.
But his intuition, his shining allows him to plug into that.
Yeah. It's like he's been given a responsibility that forces him to grow up, and he makes him understand things that he doesn't. He's 5, you know. He should be playing with trucks and stuff.
Oh, definitely. And there's even a point where somebody says something about how he's so advanced for his age, and his language abilities are so advanced for his age, and that's got to be part of it. Is he's been forced to think about these adult issues due to this insight that he has.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good. I think acts as a bit of a metaphor for all kids and how they're much more insightful than we give them credit for. They do pick up on the negative tone in your voice when you say that thing. It's not something that kids miss. Something they do pick up on.
Well, and I remember being a kid and like my parents, whenever they would fight, which was not a lot, but when they would, I felt a pit in my stomach like nothing I've ever felt before. I remember that feeling, and I think that Danny has that exact same reaction. Like, do you still love Daddy? Do you still love Mommy? Like, it's sad. It's so sad.
I think that might be Danny's whole existence through this whole book.
Yeah. I know. I can remember that too, worrying about that. Well, I used to worry all the time that our parents would get divorced. And then they did. So I guess that's part of my shining.
Part of your shining.
You are a woman, so you do shine.
No, that was a bad divorce.
You shine bright like a diamond.
So sad. Shine bright like a diamond. So I just want to, these first few chapters that we sort of get into everyone's head in this beginning. How do you say this? Prefatory matters? Am I saying that right? The first chapters are called...
Yeah, prefatory.
Prefatory?
Uh-huh.
Okay, sometimes I say words wrong.
Prefatory.
Yeah, okay.
Matters.
Now I can't say it right. How was it?
Apostrophe.
Ambulance. No, you know what I can never say is, oh God, Episcopal. Like the religion?
Episcopal.
Like the denomination.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you have to say that a lot?
No, but when I see it on a page, I read it as Episcopal, and then I read it as Episcopal, and then I get to Episcopal. It takes me 3 reads.
Wow. You should stop reading the Bible.
Prefatory. Yeah. Now you're messing with my brain.
Prefatory. Okay. So this prefatory part really, I think, does an excellent job. And Beth, you seem to think that Stephen King is good at this and does this a lot. I don't know because I haven't read a ton of Stephen King, but like we get all the motivations. We learn how desperate they all are and what makes them desperate. We learn about their flaws and what's wrong with them. And we basically understand the whole backstory. I mean, obviously there's gaps. Like we don't know exactly what happened with the kid at the school, and we don't there's some stuff is missing, but for the most part we understand emotionally like where all these characters sit, like what they're thinking going into this like off-season job and how desperate they are for him to get this job. Mm-hmm. Right?
And how I don't know if you guys have this experience, but people who are in a place of desperation, sometimes just a big change is the thing that they're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Well, we're moving to another city, so everything's going to be okay after that happens. Yeah. And this is that.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely that sense with this move for the Torrances.
Of just like, if we can just do this one thing, everything will be different.
Everything will be fine. We'll be happy together. We'll be loving parents.
Yeah.
We'll be giving Danny the best situation he can have.
We won't have any of the problems that we
Jack
have
will
now.
write his play. It'll be brilliant. Wendy will get to cook and do other womanly things.
Yeah, what does Wendy want to do? I do feel like she's a little light. And maybe it's the 70s. Maybe it's because this is a male author. But we don't get a lot out of Wendy. Honestly, she sleeps a lot. Wendy is constantly falling asleep in the daytime throughout this book. She goes and lays down a lot. Or she falls asleep while she's knitting a lot. Like, she doesn't seem to like cooking. She's really overwhelmed by the kitchen. She doesn't...
Well, she does seem to like cooking. I mean, being overwhelmed by that kitchen. It's a huge industrial kitchen.
Fair.
I think that she is a product of the time,
plus
a product of the relationship that she's in. And I think that the character being a little bit of a, for lack of a less sexist term, like a wet rag or whatever, I think he even calls her that.
Yeah.
He calls her all sorts of
he calls her a lot of
things.
stuff.
But the sort of the thing about Stephen King is that he doesn't give us the satisfaction of as a reader of being like, Jack is an evil character, Wendy's awesome.
Right.
She's kind of vanilla. She's kind of doing her best, but she's not a hero. She's just trying to exist.
Yeah, he seems to be an author who does a very good job of not judging his characters and being able to present their point of view equally to everybody else. There are points of this book where you go, oh, okay, I see where she's coming from, or I see where he's coming from.
Yeah.
And I see where that anger lives at. So yeah, I think he does a very good job of letting each character's voices speak, even when they're very much contradictory to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
hard thing to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I do feel like, I mean, maybe we can't explain it away by just like, different times. Like, because it's funny to me that like, she went to college. There's a line in there about how she has, like, she studied something in the sciences, I think. I can't remember and I can't find it. But it's like, at no point do they consider, like, Wendy could get a job. You know what I mean? It's just all about Jack. And, like, Jack has to get a job and he has to provide for the family. And this is the only thing Jack can do. Jack has to be a writer and Jack can, you know what I mean? And, like, no one ever says, like, oh, maybe, like, Wendy could work in a hotel.
Well, I think that's a large commentary on the economic times. And I think that very much carries over into today.
Yeah.
Where people feel so much pressure that they have to be this particular economic actor that they sacrifice everything else in their lives for fulfilling this one role, which is provider, instead of fulfilling several roles. Jack could have been a good father and a decent provider and all sorts of things at the same time, but he ends up caught in this web where the only thing to him is, I must provide money for my family. And that leads them into this dead end of being stuck at the Overlook.
Yeah. Well, and I think that she recognizes that Jack is finding a little bit of success as an author, which, you know, is its own form of celebrity. It's not like he's finding success in business or whatever.
Right.
That's, you know, it's unique. And I think, doesn't she get pregnant pretty... I feel like they make a comment about...
Yeah. They get married and she gets pregnant like the next year.
Yeah, so I think, you know, I think a lot of women in the 70s, you know, it's a different time. Like, the dad could make the money and the mom could stay home, and that was considered okay. And it still is okay today. It's now more that women have options when it comes to childcare. But in that time period, I think, you know, you were just a mother. And I don't think that's... I don't think Stephen King judges her for that. I don't think anybody should. But I do think it's interesting that the whole story sort of hinges on Jack's, you know, fall from grace. And she sort of maintains this level of like, I'm here.
Yeah. I am.
What can I do to help or hurt this situation?
Right. Yeah. Well, and, you know, of course we're reading it as like modern...
Well, I mean, inherently it's a very male-centric story. It's a very white-centric story.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, so we get to the Overlook, and on page 113-ish, we meet Dick Halloran.
Yeah.
Who don't you just love him? I mean, you just want to smooch him. He's the best. He's so, like, loving and welcoming and open and, like, cool and, like, he's just everything you want him to be. Like, honestly, I feel like I liked him so much, I felt like there was going to be a trick. I kind of was waiting for, like, us to find something bad out about him because he was so good. He was such a good character to be introduced. And I guess what really happens is that he just leaves, and that's, like, the part that's bad, but, like, I kept thinking, like, oh, this guy, like, is he gonna turn out to be a demon or something? Like, you know what I mean? I was suspicious of him because he was so likable.
He's set up so likable, so friendly, so convenient, almost.
It's very convenient. Mm-hmm. And he explains to Danny, like, everything. He just explains everything to him, and then we get this, like, amazing, like, conversation in the car where they just are so sweet with each other, and he just tells them, you know what, man, like, you're gonna be fine. Nothing in there can hurt you, and here's exactly what's going on inside your head. And, like, I know everything about it, and I will just tell you all about it. And then he's like, bye!
Yeah.
And drives away.
Yeah.
I did think that was shitty.
Yeah, it does bring up a lot of a trope in specifically American literature and American film that's kind of known as the magical Negro, which is a term that Spike Lee, the film director Spike Lee, kind of coined, specifically using the term Negro to point out that it's antiquated and a little
derogatory.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's and that term refers to the tendency of specifically white American authors of putting in a black character into their story that is only there for the purpose of helping the white protagonist. And Dick Halloran, as much as he is beneficial to Danny in the Torrances in general, definitely fulfills that role of he's a black character that's introduced just for the purpose of essentially being a plot device to help the white characters.
Yeah.
And it's something that Stephen King is guilty of several times over.
Yeah,
But so are almost all white. I mean, a lot of white. It's a very specifically American trope that this has developed into.
Yeah. Well, and so Tucker and I were actually texting about this before, and after you texted me that, I was reading about it because I thought, like, damn, that's really interesting. We should educate ourselves on that. And one of the things that I found most upsetting about it is that the magical Negro character will often sacrifice themselves to save the white characters, and that's like just expected of them. Which we see play out in this book, extremely heavily. Like he is just gonna, he flies from Miami to Denver and then drive. Like he goes to such extreme lengths, knowing that he's gonna die, with having his obituary written.
Mm-hmm. His will written out, and he's got a deep feeling the whole time that he's not going to survive this. And he still goes up there for a white kid he had one conversation with.
He talked to
which he, as a character, like, acknowledges. He's like, am I really doing this for some white family?
Right. And I don't even mean that specific criticism as an inherently negative thing. It's a trope. It's not, you know, one book is the culprit of it.
Or one author.
Yeah, or one author is the culprit of it. And it's a trope that didn't even start really in a negative way. It started with white writers wanting to have more diversity in their books. And that ended up in this pigeonholing of, you know, kind of a third wheel minority character that is only there to serve as a prop for the main.
We see this play out in major films and media all the time. I mean, it was just a big deal at the Oscars last year or 2 years ago. Like, there were several movies that kind of did this.
Oh yeah, it's all over the place.
I mean, you see it all the time. So it's good to talk about, so that, especially as white people, we can be aware of it and cognizant of it and talk about it.
Right. But that's the whole point of pointing it out.
Yeah.
Is saying, this is a place to grow from. And that's the whole...
Well, and I love talking about tropes anyways. Mm-hmm. So it is fun to spot them. And this is a genre I don't read a lot, which is horror. Or I guess horror.
Horror.
Wait, did I say it weird?
It's horror.
What?
Horror.
You say it horror.
No, you don't.
Joking.
Oh my god. Oh. You guys, I was like, what? Horror. I don't read it a lot anyway, so it's fun to point it out.
Literature has grown in a lot of ways that, you know, there are books people don't read now because there are comedy specials we don't watch anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just not, you know. And Stephen King sort of toes that line. There are a couple cringeworthy, I think, parts for me that come off as sexist or racist, but really I always go back to, okay, he's writing from the perspective of these characters who are super flawed, and some of them are super sexist and racist.
And these characters are also placed in a very specific time.
Yes.
Where those kind of thought patterns were what was common and pervasive.
Yeah.
All right, yes or no, would you stay at the Overlook Hotel?
Wait, before I read the book or after I read the book?
No, after, right now.
No.
Beth?
Oh, I would take a daytime tour.
Absolutely not.
I would.
Have you been to the Stanley?
No.
Have you been to the Stanley? Yeah, I've been there. The Overlook is based on the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, which is supposedly haunted, and I have been there, and it was a pretty cool experience.
Did you see any...
Did you stay?
I didn't stay there, no.
You did a daytime tour?
I did a walk around the lobby. But it's cool. It's beautiful, and it's a super... to me, I find this stuff really fascinating. So I find, like, Stephen King and the whole haunted house thing, and a hotel is just ripe for that, right?
Yeah.
I always think of that not Quentin Tarantino. Wow, that movie. Oh shoot, with the big hotel that's funny. That takes.
Oh, the Wes Anderson Grand Budapest Hotel.
Oh, yes! Grand Budapest. I love that movie.
But that movie, like, that hotel in that movie, like, gives me such an Overlook vibe, just without the horror, and I love it.
Oh yeah, I can see that for sure.
Wes Anderson always has a little tinge of horror.
There's something about it. I'm like, I think he read this book.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, Tucker has a really good idea, which I think we should do after we watch the movie, is like The Shining in pop culture. And where you see it appearing, because it's freaking everywhere.
Well, but that's more of the movie.
Right.
To be honest.
Well, yeah.
I could talk for 30 minutes about like the movie versus the book. It's fascinating to me. Because the movie, like, first of all, the movie got terrible reviews when it came out. It was panned completely.
Really?
Yes. And it has only become like a part of like the zeitgeist or whatever in the past, probably 20 years. But it's just very interesting, the differences. Like, to me, the hedges are the biggest difference. In the book, they're hedge animals, and they're such a big character.
They're terrifying.
And in the movie, it's just a corn maze.
They're so scary.
And it's just not a corn maze, but a hedge maze. It's just so interesting to me that they cut that part out of the movie. They didn't do it. They probably thought they didn't have the graphics at the time to really... But the hedge animals coming alive, I was like, this book is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the scariest parts for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a question I have, is what for you was the scariest part?
For the parts that affected me most were the parts where Jack was seeing because to me the story was anchored on Jack.
Yeah.
And so when he started seeing crazy stuff, it was a real red flag. Mm-hmm. And so when his first time when he was walking around and he noticed that the snow had fallen off one of the hedge creatures and it was in a different position, that scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And honestly, it scared me more when Jack saw the lady in the bathtub more than when Danny saw the lady in the bathtub. I don't know why, but those were the two parts that got to me most. Honestly, there were very few parts where I was really scared or tense, but those two parts I was.
I think it was Danny, but it may have been Jack, or it may have been both. Mm-hmm. But the one part where they talk about, I think it's Danny running to the door and hearing a thump, like a wet thump, and running, like that the woman got out of the tub.
Yes.
I mean, I'm getting like chills right now.
Yeah.
You're
that,
right.
I agree with you. There's not a lot of parts that actually made me that scared, but thinking of a body going and then starting to run, I can't, like, it's like, I keep checking my bathtub before I go to bed. Oh my God, the purple woman is in there.
Yeah.
What about you, Brooks?
I don't know. One of the parts that really resonated with me, I don't know if it was the scariest part, but it's when Danny goes up to the third floor and he's really afraid of the fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
He, like, can't go by it. Oof. I remember feeling that way as a little kid, of, like, being so afraid of something for no real reason, but being so afraid of it, you couldn't, like, you were paralyzed by it, and then you just knew you had to just run as fast as you could by it. You know what I mean? Like that. I have that feeling even when I'm scared now as an adult of, like, just, this is why I'm such a coward, frankly. Like, I will never fight. I will always flight. So just know that about me. Mm-hmm. If anything scary happens, I'm just going to run away. Yeah. I'm just going to run as fast as I can, probably with my eyes closed or really squinty in the wrong direction, the opposite direction.
That part gave me vertigo. That part, like, him talking about the hose, I started to be like, oh my God, Danny is, like...
He's getting, like, dizzy,
like,
or something?
Dizzy. Like, it just, like, creeped me out.
Yeah. No, it really creeped me out. And because I remember, like, okay, well, in our grandfather's house, there's a really long, dark hallway that has no windows, and there's a door in the middle of the hallway, and it has, like, a grate in it. And I used to be so afraid of that grate. I would have to run by it as fast as I could.
It's so funny. Recently,
we stayed at a really creepy Airbnb that was, like, in the middle of the forest. No, it was in the middle of, like, a cornfield in Michigan, and we got there, and it was so dark. And I had that feeling of, like, I need to run as fast as I can.
Wow.
And that was, like, a few weeks ago.
I mean, I think that just speaks to the masterful writing here. He's managed to take a whole journey over a whole book and cast that feeling over it.
Yeah.
That feeling of unease, that feeling of, oh, I should maybe run through this part.
Yeah.
You know, and that pervades this whole book.
It does, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the suspense that he builds and the, like, way that he takes, like, ordinary things that you're already like really afraid of. Like wasps are really scary. Tall ladders are really scary.
I'm not even afraid
Isolations, being alone. Yeah, just like it's just scary thing after scary thing that it's like normal stuff, but that's kind of scary. And he just layers it on over and over and over again until you're like, okay, this place is evil and scary. Like even paranormal stuff aside,
right?
You know.
Honestly, another thing that really, really freaked me out was when Wendy picked up like the glitter and the masks from the elevator.
The elevator making noise really scared me. When they're in the bed and they hear it go, and he says it's just the elevator, and she's like, "What do you mean it's just the elevator? It's the elevator."
Oh yeah, because that's after they've realized there may be that dead woman in that choked Danny. There's someone who choked Danny, and then they hear the elevator. You're right. I forgot about that. That's a very scary part.
Hearing the elevator go, and you're like, "What is that?" I can't even. That's so.
There was
effed up, Stephen King.
And it's a really loud, thumpy elevator. Like, imagine. And you know there's no one else in there.
In the whole hotel.
Like, you're the only ones there.
Gross.
This made me think of a time when I was probably 10 or 12 years old or something around there, and me and a friend were at home alone at our house in Rogersville, Missouri. And we came out into me and my friend Corey were the only people there, and we came out into the living room, and the front door was open to the house. And we got so freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
And we realized much later that
Spiff
our dog, Spiff, had learned how to open our front door to the house and let himself out into the yard. But we didn't know that, and we came out, and it just terrified us so deeply.
Yeah.
We slammed the door shut and locked it and ran back to the bedroom and stayed there until somebody else got home. And so much of this book reminded me of that moment, of just us freezing when we saw that door open. Like, we don't have an explanation for this, and that's terrifying.
Ooh. It is terrifying. Yeah. And then you feel like you can go run into your bedroom and be safe there.
No.
And then you're freaking
You can't.
not.
You can't hide.
You're not.
Yeah, you're right. Safety is an illusion.
Yeah. Safety is an illusion.
I mean, even just him going back into the bathroom and seeing that the curtain was shut.
Oh
after
my gosh.
he had opened it.
Yeah.
What a little thing that was like, so scary.
I can't even go in my bathroom.
So is this book why people are afraid of like bathtubs and the curtains and stuff? Or is that because of Psycho? Or is it both?
I'm assuming Psycho sort of... another thing I love about Stephen King is he is not afraid to like use something, you know?
Oh yeah. Good writers lift.
He knows what that did to everyone, and I think, why not?
Because we keep the shower curtain closed, but at night when I go in there, I look in there.
I look
every
in it all
time.
the time.
I always look in. Because if I don't, then I'm going to sit there and I'm going to know it's closed next to me and I didn't look in and what's in there.
You're going to wonder, is Channing Tatum in there? Is
that
what you're checking
That
for?
only ever happened once.
I'm usually looking for like water bugs or something.
Oh, really?
It's a city.
No, I'm looking for murderers.
No, I'm always looking for murderers, but I say that in my head that I'm looking for water bugs.
No, I will. If something is creepy and like out of place, I will get a knife and walk around.
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
Right? Okay, other people do that too. Okay, good.
I don't get a knife, but I do look. And sometimes I get up in the middle of the night and I turn on the lights and I walk around our apartment and I just look everywhere.
During the process of reading this book, there were 2 times where I came home and I was like, oh shit. Did I leave that light on?
Yes.
I can see that light on through my window. Did I leave that light on?
Totally.
Or is there someone in there waiting for me?
I was reading it in Maine.
God, Maine.
The worst place to read Stephen King.
Stephen King's true homeland.
Yeah.
And one night I was staying with friends. I was staying with friends the whole time, so I was like in different, I was like out of my normal routine and like out of my safety zone. And one night I was staying at a friend's place and the weather was really warm and they had opened the window in the guest room. And so I was sleeping right next to the open window. And I got so freaked out about the open window and like hearing rustling out there. And like I scooted like all the way over. I slept right along the wall. I put like a pillow fort between me and the window. I kept the light on. Like I was like, if they come in here, they're going to think I'm totally insane. Maya and Justin, I hope you don't think I'm insane. But I got so scared reading this book with the window open. I just kept thinking something's going to come in here.
Yeah.
there's going to be a face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a testament to the book.
Yes.
Just, the whole creepy air that pervades the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that.
Okay, here's a yes or no.
Sorry.
No, continue.
Oh, it's hard to do that through a whole book. That's it.
Right. Yes or no, is Jack Torrance a bad man?
No. I don't think he is.
I mean, I think objectively he is a bad man. Subjectively, I think he is a product of a lot of circumstances. I always find that, like, especially with things like addiction or, abuse of a substance or whatever, giving that context of, like, watching that growing up and I don't think he's a bad man, but I think he does a lot of bad things, so what does that mean?
Right.
Well, I think it's a testament to the writing that, we have the concrete actions done by this man in this book that say, yeah, this is a monster. But it's the writing that gives us the pause. And that's what good writing is making you take a pause and go, is this monster a relatable thing?
Yeah.
When it comes down to it. To me, that's one of the major signs of good writing is, can I objectively recognize these actions as horrible, but still at some subjective level understand them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And see where he's coming from.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I do agree. I think he's a bad man. But I see what you're saying, and I agree with you. And I think he's well written, and his character has much depth, and you can absolutely empathize with him and understand where he's coming from. But I think there's a couple like turning points, which actually would be really, I didn't go through and do that, but I love this with Breaking Bad, because I think Breaking Bad is a similar thing of like, you take really nuanced characters and put them into difficult situations and watch how they react to them, and then there's a spiral down, right? And so so you can argue with Breaking Bad, I think, and with this book, I'm sure tons of other things, but like, at what point does he become like the antagonist?
An irredeemable person.
At what point is he lost forever? And I think with Jack, we could look through here and we could identify several points where, it could be when he smashes the CB radio. It could be when he throws the key to the snowmobile.
Yeah.
It could be when he lies about seeing the woman in 217. It could be when he gets imaginary drunk the first time. Like, there's tons of different points, and you could argue for each of them of, like, at what point is he lost? Or at what point has he turned?
Yeah, I think that, like, there are people who make mistakes, and I think the book does a good job at saying that maybe him breaking Danny's arm wasn't, like, the worst thing that's ever happened. It was a terrible thing that happened, but they were able to survive it. And it's just from there, it's like, you could justify each instance by itself. Right. It just starts to snowball on top of itself, and it's like, ugh.
One of the most interesting, like, motifs for me were there are crack sounds all over this place. Whenever Jack is kind of losing it, Stephen King makes a point of making a crack or a crick or some kind of sound that is a trigger of that sound at the beginning. He sets it up very specifically at the beginning. The sound of Danny's arm breaking when he does that action.
And he says it was loud. And
And it's that, it's the guilt of that action that reverberates again and again in Jack's mind throughout this whole book.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. And, so much of this book is about Jack's mind. It's about the twisted, the twisted connections that are made inside of his mind.
Right, yeah.
That lead to his downfall.
Well, and you see that play out in the play, too, that he's writing. He gets really mixed up with what is real in the play and what's in his life and what characters does he put in the play and what has happened in the play. Like, all of that gets muddled for him.
And his nonsense with the timer and his debate student and the timer. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point.
And something that really bothers me about like the movie is they just I feel like, and this happens with Stephen King movies all the time, is that for some reason they deny the super intricate and interesting narrative that Stephen King has created, and instead they opt for something simpler, which I understand that they think American audiences who are going to see a horror movie just want to see horror. But like what makes Stephen King's horror novels so great is that you care so deeply about the characters. To me, the most fun parts about this book are equally the horrifying things that happen and the little stories about Jack remembers the time when his dad came home from work. Or like that, those independent narratives that he filters in throughout the story. Or even just like Danny talking to his friend about the other dad that drank too much or something. Those little things are what make it so good.
So are the scariest parts when you see the purple lady coming out of the bathtub or the hedge creatures moving, or the scariest parts when you see your own life in these characters that are going down this dark way?
To me, the scariest part of this book was starting to believe that I could forgive my husband for breaking my son's arm. Like, that is horrifying to me. But the way it plays out and the way Wendy was like, I'm gonna leave him. And the moment she decided he was gonna leave him, he turned to her and said, I'm done drinking.
Yeah.
That's the scariest part of this book. It's like human behavior.
Yeah. Well, just like the things that become normal, I guess, or something. Yeah, because I agree. Like, you're screaming. I'm screaming at them, like, leave this hotel. What the fuck? Get out of there. Nothing is worth this. But then, you know, I might have made those same choices because the sense of security and duty to your family and all the things we've talked about.
Yeah,
like,
and what the number one reason that is cited time and time again for staying at the Overlook is we don't have any other economic options.
Yeah.
If we leave here, we will be ruined.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends up being their downfall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sad.
All right, we kind of need to wrap up, and I know there's so much more to talk about, but let's leave it on this question, which is, why do you think that this story, The Shining, in book and film, but why does it have such lasting power for us? This book was published in 1977. The movie came out in like 81 or something. It's a very long time ago, but it's still, I mean, everyone knows the story. We know these characters. Why?
I think it's imagery. I think it's very easy to imagine a haunted house. It's very easy to imagine a ghost or a zombie or whatever. But if you were to tell somebody on the street who had never heard of it, oh, it's this family that gets snowed in at a massive hotel up isolated from everyone else. It's horrifying. If you've ever been a child and you've wanted to just wander through a mall on your own after it's closed,
yes.
There's something so cool and scary about that. And I think just the imagery and the setting of this book is just so different from any horror film or horror book that had been done before it.
Mm-hmm. Tucker?
I think it's a little bit of what we kind of were just touching on a couple minutes ago of this is a horror story filled with tiny moments of humanity that you can recognize in yourself. Mm-hmm. It makes it so much easier to put yourself in that story when you hear that little anecdote about his troubles with his father or her troubles with her mother. It's a, you know, you take this story at a very wide view and it's a pretty hammy ghost tale. It really is. Mm-hmm. But when you're reading it, it doesn't read that way because it's filled with such human details.
Yeah.
And that's I think what makes it so lasting, but what makes the book a very good thing, I think what has made it so lasting in our pop culture is the movie. Mostly. And a lot of that has to do with Jack Nicholson's performance, iconic. Which is,
it's brilliant,
skin chilling. Mm-hmm. It's terrifying.
Jack Nicholson, after reading the book, I am amazed at the casting of Jack Nicholson. Oh,
the actress? Yes. I don't know.
I
honestly don't.
It's on the tip of my tongue, but I will forget it. They are just a perfect pair for the movie, and they really give the emotion that the book needs. And I mean, you should watch the documentaries that have been made on the movie, because apparently it was a nightmare filming it, but Jack Nicholson really brings this character to light. And what Stephen King writes in this book about grinning, which I find horrifying. So many characters grin in horrifying situations, and just the way that Jack Nicholson does that on camera, it's like you couldn't do it better.
Ooh, I just thought of what I think is one of the really scary parts.
Yeah.
It's after Danny gets choked by the lady in the tub, and he's just standing at the top of the stairs looking vacant.
Yes.
And they don't see him, and he's standing up there, and they have this whole conversation. They yell at each other. They have a fight. They don't see him, and then they see him. Like,
yep.
Oh, I just got goosebumps. Like, oh, God, that's so scary.
And I love when he thinks about Tony, and Tony's, like, far away. Yeah. And I can't, like, picture it. It's so annoying that he doesn't make it clear what it is, because I get creeped out by, like, what that picture is.
Oh, and there's that line very early on where they're like, oh, well, we know why he named him Tony, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't get explained until the very end.
The very end, yes.
Oh, I loved that.
I went back and read that a few times because I was like, did I miss something?
Right.
Am I supposed to get this reference? And then it is explained in, like, the final chapter.
My very first experience to this story, to The Shining, was as a child watching the Simpsons House of Horror episode.
Okay.
Where they do a parody of The Shining. Where Homer is, Jack. And that was the first time I had ever seen this.
Somebody just tagged me in, like, a recap of that episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's why I suggested to you of looking to the pop culture. Because the movie has lived on in so many pop culture references. It's amazing.
Well, they did a lot with it in that Ready Player One movie.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Which I loved the book. I went to see the movie, and then I felt like I missed so much because I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. Because a ton of it was The Shining. Like, the whole final, like, challenge that he has to do is, like, The Shining. It's like he's in the Overlook Hotel. And I didn't know any of it, so I didn't really get it. And it kind of ruined the movie for me.
Just Google Shining references.
Yeah.
And it's
But it's crazy how much the movie adds. Like, the twins are not in the book. I mean, they're
the
sisters, but they're not in the book. The tricycle is not in the book. The red blood coming out of the elevator is not in the book. Those are huge things. And then, interestingly, in the movie, they put the guy dressed up as a dog giving the other guy oral sex. And in the movie, it makes no sense if you haven't read the book, where they talk about him being sort of a slave-like.
Also, this is our second book with a dog man.
It is.
Howl's Moving Castle also had a dog man, remember?
I put that out of my
He wasn't a furry, though, which is what this is, right? Like, furries before furries.
Sure.
Gotta be.
What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just want to make a point of how present references to this story are in all of our pop culture.
Yeah.
This is one of the stories that has most invaded.
Well, Jordan Peele, talks about it all the time in, like, his movies, which are, like, genre bending.
This is kind of a foundational thing for our
lives.
Our lives.
Yeah, I've based my life on this book.
Well, on that note, I'm going to go sneeze in the hallway. Excuse me. Thank you you all for being here so much. It's been so good. We all sounded so skinny.
Lock your...
Thank you.
Lock
Yes,
your
I
doors,
did.
friends.
Yeah, lock your doors, check behind your shower curtains.
Yeah. Watch
Carry
out
a
for
knife
purple
around.
women.
The usual.
And you know what? Give us a Here's Johnny at Halloween this season.
Okay.
Books with Brookes is in the Press Play Podcast Network, and our theme music is by Jonathan Allen.